So Mark Ramsey is my hero tonight. I got here and realized when I opened my Bible that my notes are sitting on my desk at home. And I thought, that's okay, I've got the slide deck. And so then he put the thumb drive in and it said, error, cannot open. So I thought, well, I guess we're going to wing it. So I was up here from memory trying to scratch down everything I had. And I actually got to it. I think we'll see. I'll compare my notes to the slide and see if I caught everything. But then last minute, he said, I got it to work. So yay, Mark. Right. So tonight we're going to try to do in about 40 minutes a summary of what we've done all semester. So taking all the lessons that we've done on the Beatitudes and then these challenging statements of Jesus, and we're going to sort of summarize and try to bring them into just crystal clear focus for us. And specifically at the end, when that bell, the first bell rings, I'm going to try to remember to really connect it back to what we're here for. What the idea is, how do we fight doubt? How do we stand strong? How do we prepare people to face those crises of faith? And a big part of it is the kind of disciples we are, right? And that's what we're going to sort of get to. Mr. John Christian's here. It's good to see you, John. And he walked in and seems to be doing all right. So go ahead and open to Matthew 5. Matthew 5. And we're going to begin there in Matthew 5, and I want you to think to all the times you've studied this text, and remember, one of the things that always amazes me in the context is just how absolutely, what's the word I want to say? Counterculture this would be. That's not the words I'm thinking of. How in your face these statements would be. If you think about it, so you've got these statements of Jesus right there at the beginning of Matthew chapter 5. He starts this sermon with this blessed are. And he goes to the poor in spirit, those who mourn, the gentle, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, those who are merciful. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness. Blessed are you when people insult you and speak falsely against you for my name's sake. Just take that list of things and in all your understanding. We spent a lot of time diving deeper into those ideas. In our culture, would we consider that blessed? Happy are you? Our broader culture, our society. Foolish. A lot of them very foolish. Okay, in Jesus' culture, would they have considered those people blessed, happy, fortunate? No, in fact, in Matthew chapter 5, look at verse 20. He says, "For I say to you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven." So one of the challenges he's giving right at the beginning as he goes through these things is he's challenging them to look at their religious leaders, those who are in the seat of Moses, and he says, unless your righteousness surpasses. But yet, what did he just describe? So when he says, unless your righteousness surpasses, what does he mean? Versus maybe what they may have thought he meant. Okay, unless it surpasses your religious leaders. What John?
Their view, the scribes and Pharisees were the most religious, most righteous people because they had all these rules and regulations, separate traditions that they found on everyone. So that would seem impossible.
Yeah.
So it would seem insurmountable, but Jesus is talking about a whole different mindset. Get there by a different route than through them.
Yeah, and so immediately they probably would have thought of all the things, all the pomp and all the circumstance that goes on, and the big display of righteousness and the big righteous acts and the knowledge that they have and the details of the law and all those things that described their religious leaders, and thinking, how am I going to possibly be more than that? But even that thought is in direct contrast to how he starts his sermon. Blessed are the... It's just a completely different concept to them of righteousness. What is the purpose? Okay, in the context, what's the real purpose? Sometimes, and I know that we started this class saying that, this is sort of describing a kingdom citizen, which I think is an accurate way to look at it. But I think there's even a more direct purpose that Jesus has for making these statements. Look at the immediate context. Why should I be poor in spirit? Why should I mourn? Why should I be gentle? Steve? And so, and you couple that with verse 20, it's like, what has been on display for you for what the law is not right. I want to show you what was intended, right? What else? What else is in the immediate context do you think the real clear point of why should I be poor in spirit? Why should I mourn? Why should I be gentle? Why should I hunger and thirst? Merciful. Why should that characterize who I am? I'd say that, I'm sorry. It's God's character. Notice he goes right to salt and light, right? Salt and light. And he even says a city set on a hill cannot be hidden. The kingdom citizens are there displaying those things for what purpose? Well, ultimately, you get to verse 16, let your light shine in such a way that, I think I didn't quite quote that right. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. In chapter 5:48, towards the end, he says, therefore you are to be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. So it's image bearers, isn't it? So I could also take chapter 5, verse 3 through 11. Who does it describe as well? Jesus. The man who's saying all these things displays all these things. I mean, especially you can immediately start thinking of various aspects of him. I mean, immediately, every time I read, blessed are those who mourn, I picture Jesus when he's looking at Jerusalem. Do you remember that text? Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how I wanted to gather you, and I'm not going to quite get it right, how I gathered you like a hen gathers her chicks, but you were unwilling. That sorrowful mourning over their rejection, over their sin, right? You think of his gentleness, or meekness, I think some translations. What is that? What is that meekness? What is meekness? You remember the definition? Strength under the... Does that not to a T describe Jesus? The creator of all things in the flesh, strength under control, right? And then you get down, blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness. Blessed are those who, when people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you. I mean, that's Jesus. And so my point that I'm getting at is, why are we pursuing these character qualities? Character qualities didn't capture it. Why are we pursuing these attributes? Why should these things define who I am? Is it just so I can get to heaven, to put it really simply? So I can be in the kingdom eternally? Kevin? Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be, and remember, Jesus told his disciples, if they hated me, they're going to hate you, right? So we're going to see reaction, right? Bill? Yeah. So it shapes how you look at the world. It shapes how you look at your circumstances. It shapes how you look at each other. And the idea that I want us to capture before we move on is, as Jesus sort of introduces the kingdom, these are the things he highlights. As we look at Jesus' life, these are the things that characterize his life. And the whole point is, what is he doing as he lives that life? He is glorifying his Father who's in heaven. What are we doing as we take on those characteristics? We're glorifying our Father in heaven. And to what purpose? People are going to see it. And they're going to be hopefully drawn to God, or some cases angry because they're rejecting God, and then by default they're rejecting us. How does that connect to doubt? There's a leap. How does that connect to doubt? Bill?
When these negative things happen, it shouldn't deprive me, it shouldn't shake my house, it should strengthen my house, knowing that these things are coming and I'm ready for them because of where my faith lay.
Okay, so on a personal level, if I'm trying to emulate Jesus and I'm receiving the same kind of treatment in some way, to Kevin's point earlier, it's validation that I'm on the right path, that I'm probably a pretty good image bearer, unfortunately. But so that it can actually reaffirm your faith. You think about when Peter came out of prison, and what was he doing? Rejoicing because he had been considered worthy to suffer for his name's sake or for the gospel. There's that validation to a certain extent. Steve, what else?
But what can bring in doubt is, if that's the case, then it's not having the effect I want to, as salt and light, in a positive way. It's bringing persecution rather than drawing other people to Jesus. And so I can say, well, what's the use?
Yeah, so it could absolutely, personally, again, it could be, that's not what I expected. That's not my goal was. I don't see people being drawn to that. I just see rejection. So what's the use? Why bother? What else? And specifically, how does it play into doubt when we're trying to strengthen others? How does me emulating these things help strengthen others? Jason? Either. You're just asking. You don't have another. I was waiting for you to expound about it. Okay, good. I appreciate it. Okay. Stephen? Yeah, absolutely. It changes our perspective. It gives us the spiritual vision in the temporary world. Absolutely. Steve Prezoon and then Mark. Yeah, so if they can do it, I can do it. If Steve can do it and what he's going through, I can do it. I think there's another element of that as well, as when we react as Jesus reacts, is that the normal reaction to hard things? No, it's weird. It's different. It's counterculture. That's not right. And that can be very attractive. It can be like, why does Eric Jones seem so calm when I know what he's going through? And then Eric Jones says, it's because of my Father in heaven. It's because of Jesus. I mean, there's that drawing a part of that. Mark Ramsey.
The question of how it was played into doubt or increasing doubt, again, expectation, the word was thrown out there with the blessed are. And if we see something that says blessed are, and then I'm getting all of these as I deem them negative effects, that can be rough on me personally, and it can be rough on those around me receiving, on how it can help in the faith and be something that
And if I'm going to, as simply as I can put it, then we're going to move on to the next text that I want to look at. But as simply as I could put it, if I make claims about who Jesus is, and then and these claims that Jesus makes for himself, and then I claim to be his disciple, and my kids who are learning what it means to have faith don't see it in me, I'm a source of doubt. If we have young, new to the faith people come in here and their interactions with us, who claim to be disciples, who claim that Jesus are these things, and they don't see these things in us, we are a cause of doubt. On the positive side, through all of life's ups and downs, good times, bad times, if I claim to be a disciple, this is getting repetitive on purpose, I claim that this is who Jesus is, and people see these things in me, regardless of the situation, it's a source of strength and faith. So this self-assessment of, do people see these things in me because of who Jesus is extremely important as we're creating the environment for strong, faithful fellowships. Rita? Not necessarily.
Because I feel like sometimes when we hit those moments, sitting in class, we can say the right answer. We can be, in the right frame of mind. But there are times when you are alone and you are dealing with things that not so much you question, but that you have those moments of weakness, just like some of our faithful followers, in the Bible. And I think it helps you to re-ground yourself in a sense, because to me, doubt is not always a negative. And I feel like sometimes we just throw that out there as though we shouldn't have it.
No.
And
If we shouldn't have it, then we're in a much better spiritual place than John the Baptist. Right? But to your point, Rita, is sometimes it's not even the question of is this true or not. The doubt doesn't. Sometimes the question, and we may not even verbalize it, is when it's just hitting you from all sides. It's sometimes the question: is it worth it? Because maybe there's a path that you have to sacrifice what Jesus wants you to do, but you know that the situation would be easier. And sometimes asking the question and being tested, because remember, what's the difference between temptation and testing? Oftentimes they're the exact same thing. God does the testing so that you can overcome it and be stronger. Satan does the tempting, trying to get you to fail. Right? Same thing with doubt. Sometimes the questions, asking the questions, and then going back and reevaluating and strengthening up, shoring up the answers, or getting that encouragement from brothers and sisters to shore up those answers, then you're even stronger because you asked the question. Right? That's a good point. Kevin?
I think there are a couple types of people. One, they're not trying, or they are intentionally just professing to know God. I'm thinking of Titus 1:16. It says they profess to know God, but by their deeds they deny him, being detestable and disobedient and worthless for any good deed. When, if you play the hypocrite, it's destructive. It's horrible. But then, what makes that difference between that intentional hypocrisy and the rest of us that are just, we sin because we're human? I think the difference is we need to confess. And when we confess, we're removing that mask and saying, this is what happened, I messed up. Now I'm becoming transparent, but it's still on God.
And to that point, look at the list. When I sin and when I fail, am I mourning? Do people see the mourning over that sin? Do they see that mourning over that relationship that has been damaged between me and my Creator? So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because this is not, are we perfect? Do we get it right all the time? That's not the point. But are we pursuing it? Are we growing? And when we fail, do people still see the mercy and grace and faithful response in that failure? Okay, so there's that's sort of the challenge I hope that we take away from this is read through Jesus's really bold statements and do some self-evaluation. It's a healthy practice. All right, then we turn to some of these passages, and I didn't obviously capture all the context, so but you feel free to build on any of this. So some of these what I call challenging statements. Okay, like if you're not worthy of me or you can't be my disciple, some of these statements like this. So in Matthew 10, he who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Again, in Matthew 10, and he who does not, well, Matthew 10:37, other aspects or other passages actually use really strong language, unless you hate your father or your mother, right? Really strong. Challenging our priority on relationships, right? Matthew 10:37, he who does not take up his cross and follow after me is not worthy of me. What would the people of the day, the people hearing that statement, immediately picture? Luke sort of brought this up in class last Wednesday, I think. What would people have thought? Go ahead. Yeah, not just, they would have thought death. The cross isn't for just, a light punishment or, we'll teach them a lesson and give them another chance. It's no more chances, death. But also shame. That's not a hero's death. That's not a noble death. The cross would have immediately brought up death and shame to the people who heard that. We water that down, and I think it's appropriate to make the application about the burdens we carry and the burdens we bear. I think there's application there, but we're watering it down when we say take up your cross is just take up, everybody's got their cross to bear. That's a watered down application of this passage. Jesus is saying you got to be willing to suffer death and shame. That's what they would have understood. And so there's this challenging statement that yes, bearing burdens, yes, bearing hardships, but it's this, am I willing to suffer shame? That's what I might be called to as a disciple of Jesus. Am I willing to suffer death? That's what I might be called to as a disciple of Jesus. Luke 14:33. So, and this attaches to Matthew 6 as well. So then, none of you can be my disciples who does not give up all his own possessions. No one can serve two masters, Matthew 6. This is where don't lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. Lay up for yourself treasures in heaven. He says, no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. What is it about wealth? What does wealth provide? Why do we seek it? There's other words I've got written down that go with wealth, because it's not money. I can go all the way back to one of my economics courses at Purdue. Caleb and then Bill. Security, okay? So wealth oftentimes is security, right? If something bad happens, I've got the resources to get out of it, right? And so the wealth, maybe it's not maybe you don't think, well, I'm not money hungry, but are you seeking security in things in this world? Bill? Okay, is it coming from me? Or we see the warning all the way back in Deuteronomy, right, with Moses. You're going to get in the land, you're going to be happy, you're going to be satisfied, and you're going to think, by my strength I did this. Okay? What else? I think I saw another hand. Maybe not. What else is wealth? So we got security. We got some of this ego, maybe. Status. Oh, absolutely. Maybe the money is the attraction because maybe the money is the means by which you get the status, and it's really the status that we're fighting. It's that longing to be somebody, to be better than, to have a position, to be looked up to. Okay, what else? Comfort. You guys got all the words I wrote down. Comfort. Oh, man, that's a tough one. That's one of those meddling words, right? You start messing with my comfort. But it is, because what happens? If I have the money, then I can make sure that the lifestyle is what I want. And it may not be extravagant. It just might be very comfortable. It means I can avoid some of the hardships. It means I don't have to put up with the clunker car that is constantly a headache. It means that you fill in the blank, whatever that comfort is, right? Bill? Yeah, it really is, depending on, yep, absolutely. Extravagant is a relative term. But the idea is you can't serve both. You can't have your foot in one and your foot in another and satisfy both masters. Right? And so maybe it's the wealth, which again, we say, well, Andy, I'm not pursuing money, but are you pursuing security? Are you pursuing status? Are you pursuing comfort? And I'm sure there's more words that my economics professor way back when said, money is choices. That's what money is. Money is choices. The more choices, then I can choose security, I can choose comfort, it's choices, right? All right, and then finally, Josh led us through Matthew 25, and this is the whole context. I just put 45. You feel free to turn there if you want. Truly I say to you, to the extent that you did not do it to one of these, the least of these, you did not do it to me. And remember, it says, when I was thirsty, you gave me nothing to drink. When I was hungry, you gave me nothing to eat. And that was in contrast to when in the two different groups. What's the point of that whole story Jesus tells? What's the point of you didn't do it to the least of these, then you didn't do it to me? Or if you did it on the positive side to the least of these, you did it to me. What's the point? Steve?
First of all, I care for the least of these.
Yeah, exactly. There's something about that word.
We don't have to do big things. In fact, the small things Jesus sees as big things. Service, a cup of water, a visit, a prayer, a hug.
Yeah, that some of the things that we would label little can be quite big. What else? Stephen? Okay. Yeah, and this is, and it's probably so simple, but this is what jumps out at me with that text, is that my service to Jesus cannot exist in a vacuum. It is absolutely relationships. Absolutely. I could be as pious and have my behavior straight-laced and never think an evil thought, never say a nasty word, I don't smoke, I don't chew, and I don't hang out with people who do. It's all that. Just straight-laced moral living, church every Sunday, and never lift a finger for a brother or sister. Am I a disciple? No. And so as you build this picture, okay, look at the challenges these statements make. Where do relationships rank in my life? And is my relationship with my Savior more important than these? Where do my possessions and my comfort and my security and where does that rank? What about the shame of being a disciple? The hardship of being a disciple? And then what about my relationships? Do people see Jesus in me when I'm doing the little things, the big things, the in-between things? Right? Those are challenging statements. We're going to turn to Luke 9 in just a little bit. It is amazing to me how Jesus turns away follower after follower after follower. Turns away, he challenges them for true discipleship. And there are so many cases where I'm reading one of those stories and I'm like, would I have been the one that Jesus made a hard statement to and I would have walked away? Right? It's tough. So we'll get to Luke 9 in a minute, but all of it, and that's supposed to be Matthew 10. That's a typo. Matthew 10, again, in that context, as he's finished, that's where he's talking about, you have to love me more than father, mother, son, or daughter. You cannot be my disciple if you don't take up your cross and follow after me. At the end of that thought, he says, he who has found his life will lose it, and he who has lost his life for my sake will find it. I mean, that's like the all-encompassing statement. Is when I look at my life and all the things that I'm involved with and all the things I'm passionate about and all the hobbies, and oh my goodness, I've got too many of them. all the things that define my life, are they getting in the way? Are they on the throne instead of where Jesus belongs? Right? This is a challenge thing. Now, before we go on, well, no, actually, I want to look at this one first. Why do we do it? Why, for just a second, contemplate what the demands are. Contemplate what Jesus demands of us. As we sit in our air-conditioned building, we're going to go back to our nice homes, probably have a snack before we go to bed, go to our jobs tomorrow. I mean, all those wonderful, comfortable things that I'm very thankful we have. Think about what's demanded from us. Why would anybody be a Christian? Why do we do it? To give honor? Bill? You know what you've been forgiven? Bev? I know the promises that have been made, promises of God. I might extend that to last Sunday's class. I know the God who made those promises can be trusted. He is faithful. See, presume? Because what he did for me. For what he did for me. So in John 6, do you remember John 6, that context? In John 6, there's this food thing going on, and then Jesus starts challenging him, and he makes these really bold statements that would have just been grotesque, especially in the Jewish mindset. Unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood. Do you remember that? What was the reaction from the crowd to that lovely sermon of Jesus', those lovely statements? They were gone. In fact, they were saying, these are difficult statements. Who can listen to it? Right? Do you remember that after that happened, what happened next? After that happened, after Jesus makes these horrific statements, these challenging statements, drives people away with his statements, crowds are walking away saying, this is too hard to listen to. What happens next? Jesus turns to his disciples and he says, are you going to go away too? Does anybody remember how Simon responded? Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. So what are these hard statements, and what is this concept of who Jesus is and why we would do such things have to do with doubt? Steve?
I have to face my doubts very honestly and vulnerably.
Honestly, vulnerably.
There's no one else to go to who will help me through it.
Oh, Connie, go ahead.
You wonder if you can live up to that. If you're good enough to live up to those expectations.
You wonder if you're good enough. You wonder if you can live up to that. I'm going to connect it to what Steve said, and I'm not sure if this is what Steve was meaning, but this is where my mind went is, am I going to be honest enough to admit what the idol is, to admit what the hang-up is, what the obstacle is? Remember the rich young ruler? I've done all these things for my youth. What do I lack? In Luke's account, it actually says Jesus looked and was sorrowful. The idea, I think, is that Jesus was sad he had to tell him these things because he knew the guy's heart. If you, the one thing you lack, go and sell everything you've got. The man went away. Am I vulnerable enough to ask, Lord, what am I lacking? And Connie, we're going to see things that are like, I don't know if I can do that. And that might be where the doubt gets connected, right? Because it's like, I see what he's demanding, and I know this is an obstacle for me. I can't picture a life where I can give that up. I can't. That's where the doubt starts to come in, right? How else? How else are these ideas connected to doubt? What happens when we teach somebody the gospel and we don't focus enough on what real discipleship looks like? We don't go over these kind of statements that Jesus makes. What are we setting people up for? For failure. If we try to make the gospel more palatable, if we try to, well, if I unload these things Jesus says, we may not go any further. When we try to soften it so it's more acceptable, did Jesus make the gospel acceptable? I mean, in a way, but he made it quite plain what he demanded. Rita? Yeah, absolutely. And I know some people, as soon as you said that, there are people that come to my mind that I know exactly. I've got one gentleman that I know that he says, my life was good till became a Christian. And all of a sudden he was aware of what was expected, and it was just, life was still hard. What if, and follow my train of thought here, what if I see one of these barriers in one of my brothers or sisters' lives? One of relationships, or the pursuit of wealth, or the sort of living in their own bubble, not willing to get down and dirty and serve, and all. I see these, and I don't. Keep following me here. I don't speak up. I don't try to encourage. I don't. Right? And then let's take that even a step further. What if I don't have the relationships with people so that when I see those things and when I speak up, it's not accepted, it's not acceptable because there's no I mean, you see how the whole connection, are we holding each other accountable to these things? And probably maybe as important, are we building the relationship with each other that you can hold me accountable? That I know you love me and I know you care for me. And so when Brett Kincaid says, Andy, I need to talk to you about this because I think it might be an obstacle for you, I don't just say, hey, get the log out of your own eye, buddy. And no, I go, man, that's hard to hear. But Brett has proven that he cares about me and he loves me and he sacrificed for me, so I'm going to listen. And it's going to hurt, but I'm going to listen. Yeah, I mean, you see how it always goes back to relationships. Always. And are we preparing people and supporting people to grow into these kind of disciples? And am I growing into this kind of disciple? Steve?
Along those lines, rather than just holding each other accountable, the real need is to come alongside each other.
Yeah.
You help me, and I'll help you.
Yeah.
Because I may be struggling with a similar thing, or something that you've overcome that I'm struggling with. And we come alongside, and we both get it. God is really good.
In that, thank you, Steve. And that is the essence of true accountability. It's not just, hey, I'm going to say these words to you. No, it's, hey, here's what's expected. How can I help? That burden looks heavy. Let me help. Right? And that, again, is still going to be based on relationship. And so, and then the next piece, and I know this is like, yeah, duh. In addition to helping people understand what true discipleship is and what Jesus truly demands, and having relationships so that I can hold them accountable and come alongside to lift them up and vice versa, building those relationships, the positive side of all this, because that stuff's hard, is constantly, always, without failure, talking about who Jesus is and what Jesus has done, and reminding each other every Sunday and every other time we see each other. I mean, that's the carrot, right? That's the, wow, why would I do such a thing? The more we understand that, the more that's alive and living and breathing in our day-to-day life, the more I keep thinking, okay, this is why I sacrifice. This is why it's worth it. Because those are the statements he uses. Those who will not are not worthy of me. And why can he say they're not worthy of him is because he gave everything. And if he gave everything, then he has the right to demand everything. Connie?
The world always says, God is love, God is love. Well, he is, but they don't understand what he requires. They miss all that.
Yeah, exactly. And we go ahead and turn to Luke 9 real quick. I know we only have like 3 or 4 minutes, so I'm not going to get into this. But in Luke 9 is this text, one of these texts where Jesus basically says, go away to people, right? In Luke 9, and this I think we'll get to your point a little bit, Connie. In verse 57, as they were going along the road, someone said to him, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus said to him, the foxes have holes and the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. What in the world kind of response is that to somebody who says, I want to follow you? You got to know what you're getting into. And to Connie's point, do we put conditions on our discipleship? Well, I'll follow as long as I don't have to give up this. We don't say that, but are we doing that? I'll follow as long. And you keep reading. Relationships come back in. Follow me, verse 59. But he said, Lord, permit me first to go and bury my father. And he said, allow the dead to bury their own dead. But as for you, go and proclaim everywhere the kingdom of God. We've done some study of that. Most likely, in my opinion, it's not that his dad was dead at home. It's like, let me take care of my elderly father until he's gone. Right? I would, but I got this. Jesus is saying, I should be more important in that relationship. He says, and then say, I will follow you, Lord, verse 61, but permit me first to say goodbye to those at home. But Jesus said, no one after putting his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of God. Here's the end-all takeaway for the whole class. And this is not going to be nearly as good as it should be. But if we are pursuing discipleship the way Jesus demands it, with all our imperfections and with all our failures, but we're pursuing discipleship. That means pursuing the relationships with each other. It means pursuing the character change in my life. It means pursuing the sacrifice that Jesus demands. If we are pursuing that, then we are going to be building foundations in the relationships that we have. We're going to be setting an example of Jesus in the flesh, and we are going to create disciples in his image that are unshakable. And will be unshakable. And that's why these things go hand in hand. Doubt often arises because we don't truly understand true discipleship and we don't truly pursue it as Jesus demands. Any thoughts or closing comments? Look at that, all this class and I just finished a minute early. Woo-hoo! Thank you.